Hey, what is up guys? Welcome to MST.TV. This is Nishi here, bringing you guys our first market watch of the year 2021. The year is just starting off, but we're already seeing a ton of price fluctuations all over the market. The Yu-Gi-Oh market and the meta are constantly evolving, so it should come as no surprise that we're seeing these changes right off the bat. And of course, with people in the United States just starting to receive their stimulus checks, we're bound to continue to see more and more buyouts in the near future. So today we're going to break down these recent trends and examine why they're happening and what you guys should do if you either own or are looking to pick up these cards. Let's get started. Kicking things off, let's take a look at Debunk. So this is a counter trap card that negates the effect of an opponent's monster that activates in the hand or graveyard and then banishes the card. I remember quite some time ago, Debunk was a really popular side deck option that was used to help in the Dark World and Mermail matchups, but recently the card hasn't seen too much play. It is a counter trap and therefore it's fairly slow, and it's also a little bit situational. However, we are starting to see the card pick up some hype as a side deck option against the Drytron deck. Now, not only does it negate the effect of a Drytron in the graveyard, preventing it from coming out, but it also banishes the Drytron monster from your opponent's graveyard so that it can't be summoned in the following turn. Of course, this doesn't stop them from tributing for the Drytron effect, since that is a cost, so they'll still be able to trigger the effect of Benton, but it stops them from getting bodies onto the field, so it's harder to bring out Vanity's Ruler or to go into AA Zeus. Now, it is primarily the secret rare from Legendary Collection 5Ds that was targeted and mostly bought out, where the cheapest copies on TCG Player right now are about $14 each, though there are very few quantities in the first place. There are two other printings, the original super rare, which is available for only $1 or $2 each, and then the commons from the Power Code Link structure deck. Now, I do think that the secret rares look really nice, though I don't think that they're worth paying $10 each for. I do think that if you can grab the supers for $1 or so each, then they are a pretty good pickup with some decent upside potential. However, the card is only really amazing in the one Drytron matchup, right? And with such a diverse format, it might be better if your side deck slots were to go to something that's good in multiple different matchups. This is a good card to pick up if you can grab the supers for under $1, or if you can pick up the commons out of a bulk bin or something like that for maybe $0.25, because if Drytron establishes itself as the best deck of the format, then you might need to side this card and want to have them readily available. But I think that if you are going to be siding a card specifically just for the Drytron matchup, you might be better off using something like Ally of Justice Cycle Reader to prevent them from using their Drytron effects in the first place. Next up, we have Predaplant, Verte, Anaconda. We're starting to see the Dragoon engine become more and more popular, I think, as people are becoming less prepared to deal with it. We've seen it from decks like Dragon Link and Adamantipator, where after they get hit by the ban list, they throw the Dragoon package in to make up for some of the cards that they lost, and all of a sudden you have a pretty scary deck once again. Red Eyes Dark Dragoon was actually trending downwards in price over the last little while. We saw it fall down to around $30 each before now bouncing up to $40. Well, Verte Anaconda is actually one of the most important pieces of the Dragoon package, enabling the engine to be splashed into so many other strategies as long as they're able to get a couple of monsters onto the field, and it only has one printing available. The result is that the card has actually followed a price trend very similar to that of Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, and Verte Anaconda has actually gone from being only around $20 a piece to now being almost $35 for a single copy, which is a pretty significant price jump for a card that is typically just played at one. I think that at only $20 to $25, the card was pretty undervalued, and I think anywhere from $30 to $35 is a pretty reasonable retail price for the card. The card has been out for about a year, so there is some time before we should expect to see it reprinted. I think that a reprint in the second half of 2021, maybe in something like a gold series if we do get one this year, is about the time frame where we should expect to see it. Now, if you can grab your copies of Verte Anaconda for anywhere from $20 to $25, under the $30 mark for sure, I think it's a solid pickup because it is going to be one of those cards that's meta, that's always going to have some pretty significant demand. However, because of how popular the Dragoon package is, it's definitely possible that we could see Verte Anaconda reprinted a bit earlier than expected, so I'd definitely be wary of holding on to too many extra copies. Also, if you're looking at investing in this card, I don't think it has too much upwards potential beyond the $35 mark. I could maybe see it hit $40 if it starts to see play in something like Drytron or Virtual World, which are like those top tier meta decks. But at $30 to $35, I think we're kind of at the peak of this card's price. So at that range, if you can sell your excess copies, I would definitely go ahead and move them. The next card we're looking at here is Dogmatika Ecclesia. So the Dogmatika engine is one that we've talked about multiple times before, with Nadir Servant being another piece of the engine that has skyrocketed in price. However, I think that Ecclesia definitely gets overlooked sometimes because it is an ultra rare, unlike Nadir Servant, Fleur-de-Lis, Maximus, and Titaniclad, all of which are secret rares, and even though we now get 4 ultra rares in a box, we still do see ultra rares become fairly expensive with cards like Shaddoll Schism and Linkross. Now, for quite some time, Ecclesia was under the $20 mark. Theoretically, there was a greater quantity of them running around on the market than cards like Fleur-de-Lis. However, we also need to keep in mind that Ecclesia alongside Nadir Servant is a main piece of the Dogmatika engine. It's the other searcher for the strategy, so not only do you basically search it every time off of Nadir Servant, but it's what gives you access to cards like Maximus or Punishment, regardless of if you want to run just Punishment or you want to play a slightly bigger Dogmatika engine. You're probably running 2 to 3 copies of Ecclesia. As a result of this steady increase in demand over time, we've seen Ecclesia go from being down at around $18 to now being up at the $27 mark. This is a card that we aren't expecting to be reprinted until the 2021 Megatins, as it does fall within the 4 core sets that would be reprinted in that set. So there is a fixed amount of time for which the card will stay at this price before it inevitably falls back down. Ultimately, it's going to depend on you guys and how much you plan on playing, because I think at this point, the Dogmatika engine has proven just how strong it is and how strong it's going to continue to be moving forward. Realistically, it'll stay up at around the $25 mark right up until a month or 2 before the release of the Megatins. So even if you buy them now, you do still have a solid 7 or 8 months of play before you'll want to sell them to recoup as much value as possible. Next up, this is kind of a random one, but we have Underworld Fighter Balmung. So this card is a level 4 synchro monster that summons a level 4 or lower monster from out of your graveyard when it is destroyed. This one is pretty out of nowhere, but this card is actually an extra deck option that is used in new Noble Knight builds. You can make this card using Deskbot 001 and a Mecha Phantom Beast token, and then after going into Charles, you can equip a card to Charles to pop the Balmung, which lets you summon back Mecha Phantom Beast Coltwing from the graveyard, which triggers its effect, allowing you to summon 2 tokens, and then you can bring out the Deskbot 001 yet again. Without Smoke Grenade in the game anymore, Nobles don't need to save the Charles pop for the end phase, so they can use this card to extend out their combos. It's pretty interesting, though I think that at this point, Nobles are definitely a bit more of a tier 2 or rogue strategy. They definitely aren't tier 1. Now, this card has 2 printings available, a super rare version from Astral Pack 6, which has now been mostly bought out to the $11 mark, and then the original rare printing, which is still available for under $1 a piece. Even though this is a cool card for the Noble Knight combo, Nobles aren't doing anything anytime soon, and I highly doubt that Balmung is going to be seeing usage in any other strategies. The effect is abusable, with it not being a once per turn at all, but it does have to be destroyed, so that's a specific condition that has to be met in order to activate its effect. I would definitely look at offloading the super rare copies while they are hyped up for now, since they'll almost definitely go back down to being $5 a piece within the next couple of weeks as more and more people list their quantities back onto the market, and just have a couple of rares available for yourself set aside just in case the card becomes good and you need to have one available to use. The next card we're looking at here is Knightmare Cerberus. This is a card that is really slowly starting to creep up in value, so I feel like Cerberus is kind of one of the more forgotten nightmares. Phoenix and Unicorn are definitely the 2 that have seen more play, and Cerberus kind of gets forgotten about. We even see that in Genesis Impact, Phoenix and Unicorn were both reprinted, but Cerberus wasn't. However, I do think that Cerberus is a card that we're going to want to keep an eye on. So right now, positioning and column placement isn't an extremely important aspect of Yu-Gi-Oh! We aren't seeing Mech Knights very much or anything like that. However, there are 2 cards that we have to keep in mind to play around, those being Relinquished Anima and Geonator Transverser, both of which can mess up your opponent if they don't remember to keep positioning in mind. I only know that because I watch DB Grinder's videos pretty regularly, and he points it out every single time. It basically gets ingrained in my mind. However, Cerberus is something that can specifically destroy monsters in the main monster zone. So Knightmare Cerberus can get rid of monsters that are summoned in that far right monster zone. I remember for quite some time Cerberus was down at being only $1 or so, definitely under the $2 mark, but over time it has gone up to now being $4 for the ultra rare and $3 for the super. Before, when Phoenix only had 2 printings, we did see them go for about $5 fairly consistently, and I think that there's a chance that if Cerberus continues to not be reprinted, we could see it move up to around the $5 mark for either version, or maybe even a little bit past that if it continues to see meta play. I do think that this card is something that could see an increase in play in the future as an option to help break through boards before going ahead and setting up your own. I wouldn't invest heavily in this card though, because it definitely could be reprinted in something like Ancient Guardians, where we could get a collector's rare print to match the Phoenix and the Unicorn. Who knows? Just be aware that this card is no longer something that you should be offloading for only $1, but rather could be seeing an increase in meta play and has the potential to slowly climb in price the longer that it goes without a reprint. The next card here is Invoked Mechaba. So as we all know, Mechaba is a walking negate, allowing you to discard a card from your hand to negate an opponent's card that is the same type of card as the card that you discarded. It's also reasonably big at 2500 attack points, and it can banish the card that you negate with it as well, which is really cool. Mechaba is currently trending for a couple of different reasons. First of all, we've seen a little bit more success and play from different invoked strategies, such as Invoked Dogmatika and Invoked Mech Knights, and obviously Mechaba is a key extra deck monster that you're going to want to run multiple copies of in those strategies. However, secondly, with more people playing the Dogmatika engine, we've actually seen a lot of usage of Dogmatika Maximus, which allows you to send 2 cards from each player's extra deck to the graveyard. Mechaba is a very natural counter to this strategy, as if your opponent uses Maximus on you, you can dump Cyber Dragon Nova, whose effect allows you to summon Mechaba directly out of your extra deck for free. This is really cool, but it's one of those things where if everyone starts playing Maximus, then everyone starts playing Nova and Mechaba, and then maybe people won't play Maximus anymore and it kind of goes back and forth, so the demand for Mechaba will kind of fluctuate. Anyways, it's actually the lower rarity version of Mechaba that saw the initial buyout. This card was only around $4 before, but it did shoot all the way up to $10 a piece with very few quantities available on the market, before now settling back down to around $7 a piece. And then with this buyout, we are also currently seeing the secret rares slowly get eaten off the market as well, and they're currently sitting at $21 each. For the most part, this is just a one-of if you're using it to counter Maximus, but with only 2 printings available, I don't think it's going to get too much cheaper anytime soon. It is something that feels like it needs a reprint, since we've already gotten multiple reprints of the main invoked cards such as Alistair, Magical Meltdown, and Invocation, so maybe there's a chance that this card is on Konami's reprint radar as well. To me, this card is a hold. Whether or not it gets reprinted soon is anyone's guess, but with only 2 printings available, if you're planning on using the card, I would rather hold on to it than worry about selling it and buying it back too often. However, if you're holding on to extra copies, I would look at slowly moving them out if you can do so at close to the card's retail value, just in case the card does see that reprint sometime soon. Really briefly here, let's take a look at Lyrilusc Assembled Nightingale. So in Drytrons, this card is actually a really important extra deck option. It is a rank 1 that allows you to attack your opponent directly with it, which grants the deck access to double a Zeus, which we all know by now can single-handedly turn the entire game around. Now, interestingly enough, this card only has 1 printing available from way back in Maximum Crisis as a super rare, and wasn't even reprinted in the Megatins from that year. Now, Drytron is basically a tier 1 deck this format, and this card is a key card used in that strategy. As a result, we've seen Assembled Nightingale go from being basically super rare bulk to now being $2 a piece. I definitely think this is a card that everyone should be aware of, and you guys should definitely look to dig this card out of your bulk wherever possible. I know that I personally have a ton of copies of this card that I used to never really care for at all, but now that you can actually move them, they are worth digging up and setting aside. If you're planning on playing the card, I would just pick one up now or keep one that you already have. At only $2, it's not like it's breaking the bank or anything like that, but it is a really important extra deck option to have available if you want to play Drytron. Overall, I think that the card is something that you should move for now while it's worth something. I'm just kind of on the fence about this card and its future prices. On one hand, I could definitely see this card not being reprinted, but Drytron continuing to do well, and this card could be a $5 card in the near future. But on the other hand, I could also see this card being reprinted as an OTS tournament pack common, and then becoming like a 25-cent card once again. I'm definitely on the side of playing it safe and just offloading it wherever you can, but if you're already sitting on some copies that you've had in your bulk for quite a long time, maybe you guys will feel comfortable just holding on to them for now and seeing how much higher they can possibly go. The last two cards I want to look at for today are two Plunder Patrol cards, Redbeard and Whitebeard, which were released way back in Ignition Assault. The Plunder Patrol archetype has received a lot of hype in the past, as a lot of cards from the strategy are really good, and people have been really hyped up to see the deck do well. Unfortunately, the deck was just never very successful here in the TCG. However, in the upcoming OCG set, Lightning Overdrive, a new Plunder Patrol card was just confirmed, and it's actually a really powerful monster with a great effect. I personally don't think it's enough to make Plunder Patrols broken or anything like that, but it is a pretty big boost to the strategy. I think that if we were to see another couple of cards come out of similar caliber, then maybe we could actually have a very meta viable strategy on our hands. Obviously, we won't know about that for sure until it actually happens, but the Plunder Patrol cards that we have so far are definitely things that we will want to keep an eye on. We're currently looking at Redbeard and Whitebeard here because it's actually these two cards that were quite expensive for some time, sitting at around the $10 to $12 mark each, as people constantly expected the next wave of Plunder Patrol support to be good, even though it never ended up happening. When we got the last Plunder support, these cards kind of fell in price down to around the $4 mark, but with this latest card, they've actually each rebounded to around $7 to $8 each. We're expecting these cards to be reprinted in the 2021 Megatins, though obviously there's a chance that they might not be in there. Either way, I know that a lot of people are sitting on whole cores for this strategy, waiting for the day that the strategy becomes viable, and if the deck were to get more support, these are among the first cards that will shoot up in price immediately. I would highly consider picking these up if you can for around $5 each, maybe at least picking up a set of each for now because they definitely do have a lot of upside potential. However, do be aware that this is a gamble, albeit more of an educated one, because we have no guarantee that even if we were to receive more Plunder Patrol support, that the new cards would necessarily be any good at all. Alright guys, that is it for today's Market Watch episode. I hope you guys all had a great New Year's, even if you weren't able to celebrate the way that you normally would, and hopefully 2021 is going to end up being way better than the disaster that was 2020. Guys, if you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to hit that thumbs up button for me. Also, make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below. Let me know what else is going on with the market, or maybe something that I missed, so that I can hopefully cover it in a future video to keep you guys all as informed as possible. Also, if you haven't already, make sure you hit the subscribe button to get all of the latest and greatest content from both Tombox and myself here on the channel. And until next time, guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.